Hey everyone, and welcome to today's explainer. I want you to picture something with me for a second. Imagine a little 3D stickman. This stickman is going to be our proxy today, and right now, he is wandering through a literal towering maze constructed entirely out of negative thoughts. Every time he hits a dead end, boom, a new wall of anxiety just drops down. It's claustrophobic, it's incredibly frustrating, and here's the kicker, it is entirely self-imposed. Today we are going to figure out exactly why we build these invisible walls around ourselves, and way more importantly, how to tear them down. Okay, let's dive into this.
So the foundational thesis of our source material today is actually pretty simple. Everything you do in life starts with an idea, right? A single thought. But if the very foundation of your mind is rotten, how can you ever expect to succeed? The real challenge here is that to fight this invisible phantom of the mind, we first have to deeply understand its nature. I mean, if you don't know what you're fighting, you're literally just swinging at a ghost. We have to learn the absolute fundamentals of how our thoughts actually operate if we ever want to hand our 3D stickman the keys to his own cell.
Let's test this right now. I am telling you, right at this exact moment, do not think about the color of the shirt you are wearing. Seriously, don't do it. But what just happened? The very first thought that popped into your head was the color of your shirt. This proves rule number 1 of the mental prison. Do not try to stop your thoughts. The reason why is incredibly simple. To suppress a thought, your brain first has to identify it. It asks itself, wait, what am I supposed to stop thinking about? Oh right, my blue shirt. But your brain doesn't just instantly filter that out. It checks again, realizing, oh no, I'm thinking about the forbidden thing. So it checks to see if it's still thinking about it, and boom, you are forced into an endless biological loop. Every single time you try to actively suppress a thought, you're actually giving it more power because you're asking your brain to do something that's biologically impossible. Now that we know we can't just force our thoughts to stop, we need to understand the specific bars of this mental cell we've built.
Which brings us to Section 1, how your brain tricks you, the biological and emotional traps.
A lot of people think, hey, I produce my own thoughts. How in the world am I tricking myself? Well, thousands of your thoughts actually masquerade as problem solving, but in reality, they're just useless traps amplifying your negativity. And this brilliantly illustrates the difference. Imagine someone gives you a vague, maybe slightly critical response. On the left side here, your brain asks, what did they mean by that? Now think about it. That thought leads absolutely nowhere. There's no decision, no action, no light at the end of the tunnel. It just recycles on a hamster wheel. But on the right, we have, how do I get them to clarify? Boom, you are now oriented toward taking action. You can simply go and ask them what they meant. Any thought that doesn't ultimately lead to a decision or an action is literally just your brain pretending to solve a problem while actually doing nothing.
Moving right along to Section 2, the illusion of safety, choosing familiar pain over the unknown.
Let's see how this builds into even larger traps. Because look, it's not just about tiny daily interactions. Our brains actually prefer certain types of suffering over the alternative. You might be wondering, would my brain really prefer guaranteed misery? The terrifying answer is yes. Let's take our 3D stickman again. Let's put him in a gloomy, super toxic work environment that is completely ruining his mental health, his relationships, and his personal time. That is guaranteed misery on the left, but on the right is the unknown, quitting. Faced with that unknown, the brain actively chooses the familiar suffering just because it feels manageable. It can plan for known dangers, but it absolutely cannot plan for the unknown. This right here is the ultimate prison. Sometimes stepping into the unknown and taking a calculated risk is quite literally the only way to save your own life.
Another major trap we fall into is that repetition replaces reality. The brain learns through repetition. It's how we accept basic facts like gravity, right? If you drop a pen 1,000 times, you know for sure that it falls. But apply that exact same logic to your thoughts. If you make a mistake and immediately tell yourself, I'm stupid, and you repeat that every single time you slip up, that thought morphs into your absolute reality. Soon enough, our stickman just sits in his cell and stops trying altogether, entirely convinced he's going to fail anyway. A tiny, repeated thought has literally decided his entire destiny.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how simple the solution to this trap is. We have to shatter the illusion by actively collecting evidence. Just ask yourself, do I always make a mistake? The answer is almost certainly no. An overwhelming 99% of the negative thoughts we constantly repeat to ourselves can be instantly disproven with simple, hard facts. You just have to be willing to actually look for the evidence against your own negative narrative.
Then there's the massive issue of time and emotion. As the source material highlights, we are absolutely terrible at predicting our own future emotions. Sure, we can guess what will happen, but we cannot accurately predict how deeply or how long we're actually going to feel it. Just look at this timeline for a job interview. Days before, you totally inflate it, locking yourself in this awful anticipatory dread, thinking, I'm going to be anxious forever, this interview is going to ruin me. You completely catastrophize the whole shebang. But what actually happens in reality? You show up, you feel a bit nervous at the interview, then you go home, you eat a sandwich for lunch, and life just goes on. Your brain dramatically overestimates emotional impact. Recognizing this flaw is the absolute key to breaking out of that anticipatory dread.
Okay, we also have to talk about the biology of avoidance, which is perfectly mapped out here in these steps. When you face something scary and you choose to avoid it, your brain releases dopamine as a sort of reward for escaping danger. And yeah, it feels incredibly good in the moment. It feels like you made the right choice to bail. But this is a fake reward. That quick dopamine hit reinforces the fear, meaning the exact same task is going to look even scarier the next time you face it, demanding that you avoid it yet again. It is a vicious, closed biological cycle. The only way to break it, you have to face the fear. Because when you actually complete the scary task, your brain releases a totally different dopamine hit, one tied to genuine confidence and achievement.
The final trap we really need to cover before we plan our grand escape is the primitive thought. You see, most thoughts start out extremely basic, vague, and frankly, completely meaningless. Imagine a friend casually mentions they're trying to fix their sleep schedule. Your instant, unexamined, primitive thought might be, oh, they're so much better than me. If you accept that raw, knee-jerk reaction as an absolute truth, well, you've just locked another cell door. Instead, you have to dig into it, stop and realize, wait a minute, I'm trying to fix my sleep too. They just happened to bring it up first. Never, ever take raw, primitive thoughts at face value. All right, we've mapped out the prison. We know exactly how the walls are built and how our brain tricks us into locking the door from the inside. It is time to shift gears. Let's break our 3D stickman out of this maze.
Section 3. 4 Steps to Freedom. The Ultimate Escape Plan.
The source outlines a highly practical, 4-step framework to finally take back control and break free from these toxic thought patterns. Step 1 is to understand the event. Step 2 is to identify the added thought. Step 3 is to analyze the impulse. And Step 4 is to run an experiment. This framework is literally designed to turn you into an unstoppable force. Let's break down exactly how you can apply this with a very relatable real-world example.
Imagine you send a text to someone, and it's been hours with absolutely no response. Step 1 is to stick strictly to the objective facts on the left here. They haven't replied to my text. That is the only actual event that has occurred. Step 2, over on the right, is where you identify what story your brain just attached to that event. Your brain instantly screams, "Oh my gosh, they hate me!" Contrasting these two really highlights the massive, irrational jump your mind makes between the strict facts and the toxic, made-up story.
Now we move to steps 3 and 4. So the crucial point is, you have to realize that the thought is speaking, not you. Step 3 is analyzing the impulse on the left. What is this negative thought actually trying to make you do? Is it trying to make you sit around and sulk? Or maybe send a super aggressive follow-up text? Remember, you do not have to obey it. Which leads us beautifully to step 4 on the right. Run an experiment. Do something small to just test the thought. In this specific case, simply wait. By forcing yourself to just wait it out a bit, when they finally reply explaining they were just busy in back-to-back meetings, you have successfully collected hard evidence and proven that negative assumption completely wrong.
Look, we all think, but as we've seen throughout this whole explainer, there is a massive, life-altering divide between a person who lets their thoughts imprison them and a person who makes their thoughts serve them. Our 3D stickman absolutely doesn't have to stay in that maze, and neither do you. So I want to leave you with this final thought. Will you use this framework to master your mind and become an unstoppable force? Or will you let those unexamined, looping thoughts kill the best version of yourself before it's even born? The key to the cell is literally in your hands. Thanks so much for learning with me today.